Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun Late Night Edition.
Cheers.
Cheers. Happy,
welcome.
Here we go.
Happy end of the workday.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. How many communications people?
44 now, apparently. 44. Anyways, let's go.
Good people. Bad municipal politics having that many people in that one role. It's just, we just have to preface, we're not mad at the communications people. We're mad at the people that keep doling out the salaries to so many people when these people are talented. Give them more than one file, please. Yeah. How about, let's talk about
just so people understand my reference. We're recording at 6:30 at night. Usually we do this in the middle of lunchtime approximately. Yeah. So it's quite late because both Jody and I are doing NW gigs this week, and there was just no minutes in the daytime to spare. So here we are, late night.
Here we are
at home. You're going to hear doors slamming, kids running around,
dogs barking,
people drinking outside. It's all happening. So
let's do it.
Apologize in advance.
Well, we're hearing the dogs bark, and then we're going to start by talking about really the cute puppies that people think are dogs that are actually coyotes in Stanley Park, and then they get fed. How's that segue? But people feeding like wild animals, or even thinking it's really cute, I'll just leave a little something here for the dogs.
Yeah.
And now, okay, so 30 people since December have been attacked by coyotes. It started with runners, right? People that are running through the trails deep in the bush. And now we've gotten to the point, George, that it's a 2-year-old little girl with her family, basically near the parking lot at the aquarium. So in the middle of the busiest part of the park, this coyote comes out of nowhere, pounces on this little girl, bites her. She's okay. She was taken in to be checked. But can you imagine the trauma for her and her family? I mean,
as a parent, I just can't imagine.
I just can't imagine.
And to fight have you ever tried to take a dog on? I mean, you're a dog person. A dog attacks you. If you've ever had a dog that's kind of being attacked by dogs, and you try to stop that dog, it's scary. Imagine a wild coyote. I mean, as a dad, I'd be like, well, you. So they managed to push him off, the dog off, or the coyote off. But yeah, terrible. But it's what happened afterwards that is very curious to me. I mean, you've got this. Well, I mean, there's
what didn't happen after.
Happened, yeah. I mean, there's the one hand, the park board, our favorite organization, the Do Nothing Park Board for the most part, or do what park board. So they didn't really hold any kind of press conference. They didn't do any. Talk about unspun. They did zero spun.
They did it. They did an actual availability today with the conservation officer. They did at 1:30 this afternoon. Didn't tell anybody. It wasn't until the show that I was doing today reached out to the conservation people, not the park board. Right. And they said, we're actually doing an availability at 1:30 in Stanley Park. It's like, guess what? No one can get there.
Yeah, of course.
Who holds a press conference in Stanley Park to address this? Like, that is a city hall press availability with all of the park board, all of them there to answer questions of the media. Do your press briefing and then stand down and stand before the microphones and be asked the questions. Make yourself available. Answer why we have had no action about coyotes. I mean, the priorities, George, I keep coming back to this with the park board. The priorities are broken. Yep. That there is anything else. I got a survey from the park board today asking me about, tell us what you want in your community. That
was a mistake on their part. So that's on the one hand.
Is that me? Was that me there?
Yeah, that was you. That's you. Cones. Let me say the word cones and make you go crazy.
Don't talk to me about the cones. I'm kidding.
So and then of course what happened today that last night they shot for coyotes or no, they euthanized them. We don't know how they actually killed them, but they euthanized them.
They used soft leg hold traps. And then they killed them.
Oh, bad.
Whether it was by injection, nighttime, by injection or by
late night podcasting. Everything can happen. Knocking off microphones. Yes. No, I know. So okay, that's even worse. I think. What does that even mean? I don't even understand. Anyway, so it's like, okay, so now, we have to exterminate these poor animals that are confused because they're living in an environment where people are feeding them.
Yeah.
And, there was a Georgia Strait article, and I interviewed the lawyer, this animal rights lawyer, and it's a good argument. It's about, it's not the coyotes that are the problem, it's the humans. And that's a good point. And I think that here's where the problem is when we get back to the park about priorities. So she was talking about, that you have to ticket people if they're going to feed the coyotes or feed any wild animals, which of course they can. But we know how many park rangers are there for the 200 plus parks in Vancouver?
Look, my dogs are fighting. Hey, guys.
They're defending the coyotes.
They are. They're like, we're mad about it. But what are there? Like, how many? 14?
14
bylaw officers
to deal with, to ticket, Stanley Park and every other park. It's an interesting idea, but it's not possible. So here we have this organization, and it's interesting because we have the issue of, the announcement this week about the ambulance services and all the money that they're going to do, dealing with the whole heat thing, and that's great. The same kind of thing should be done. The park board needs to start thinking about that as well and saying, you know what, there's something wrong. We need to fix it. We need to move our money over to that, because that is our priority now, not this, that, this. And that's
the only time they've done that, the only time in recent memory, the only time that they've moved their money and taken swift action was to rent those pylons and put them around Stanley Park. That is the only quick action I've seen, because that decision was made at night, and at 6 o'clock the next morning, it was installed. I believe that the will
coyotes is not a priority.
How is that not a priority? Does it need to be litigious first? Does somebody need to die first? Does a kid need to get killed first? You said this about Oppenheimer and Strathcona. You're like, somebody's going to die. Yeah. And you were right. You were right. And here we are again.
Or now they're going to call all the coyotes. They're just kill them all, because
they
don't know which ones are, and what are you doing to deal with the problem? Why wildlife is attacking people? That's what I want to know. Like, what are you doing? Are you putting in proper garbage cans, for example? Are you ticketing people who are feeding these coyotes? People don't feed. Please don't feed the coyotes.
Please don't feed the coyotes. Put signs that say that in graphic ways so that people who don't speak English can know that to be the case. But go back to the garbage cans. It is astounding to me that Stanley Park has old school, basically
overflowing
feeding troughs, food trucks for coyotes. I mean, and never mind the people that are housing themselves in that park. There are people living within Stanley Park who do not have refrigerators or lock boxes or what have you. There are camps in there that these coyotes are feeding from. They are becoming domesticated in a way that they're no longer fearful of humans. So they're looking for humans to feed them. I mean, we can't blame the animals. That's why Rebecca Breder, I believe, the animal rights lawyer, I believe that she is correct, that this is not a coyote problem. This is a people and park board failure,
which is run by people.
Yeah.
Maybe the coyotes should run park board. It might do a better job.
I have an idea about park board, how it would change. I don't know that Ken Sim's going to be able to dissolve the park board, which is his platform that he's running on for mayor, right? But I have an idea. And I think it would be great if the members of the park board and the people of City Hall, the mayor and the councillors, everybody got together, have an in-camera meeting so they can feel like they planned it all themselves and have a conversation whereby the park board officials, the commissioners who are elected to manage the parks and make sure that they're beautiful and safe and cared for and kept up and clean for people to use, they can do the public consultations and the ideas, and we want to plant this beautiful garden over here and we want a new playground over there. They can do all the consultation because City Hall doesn't have time to manage all that apparently. And then once those are done, they do the list and that goes, wait a minute, this goes to council and then the councillors as well as the mayor look at what the priority lists are and then they vote on what order it happens in.
Ding dong, ding dong. Easy. Why not?
Why not?
And I think there's also a way, I don't know why you can't do this in your tax forms and put in prioritization as a taxpayer every year. Like, say, here are the 5 things we want. And why digital technology, all this stuff. There's just, we're living in 1930 and how we make decisions here. It's just
the only reason anyone, not someone, or anyone would argue against having more eyeballs on the list of priorities and putting forward what is best for the greater good. The only argument is I have an agenda and it won't get through if I let go of this.
Yeah.
And the agenda politics needs to stop. And I say this almost weekly. I sound like a broken record, but I'm not going to stop. And I can tell that it's getting under the skin of some, because I'm feeling the heat of them coming at me, and it's only going to make me louder.
You clearly haven't heard that Doug McCallum commercial, have you? For Surrey, that commercial's on. It's on a lot, and it's basically how amazing he's done, because he's achieved everything he set out to achieve. It's quite interesting. I mean, he has police. But that's agenda politics right there. That guy went in with 3 ideas, and that's all he's been focused on.
Yeah.
And to the detriment potentially of the future of Surrey, who knows? But he would argue differently. When you have agenda politics, it can work 2 ways. You can become really popular, or you're not popular at all. I mean, Vision obviously was agenda driven on certain aspects, but it's interesting. But yeah, it is definitely going that way. And I think that sort of find your key things and put a whole bunch of money into those things and talk about them all the time, so that you can win again and spin, right? That's what we talk about.
Those items should be on the back of the ballot, not those convoluted, crazy, or you check yes here if you want to spend $10 million on whatever. Everyday citizens should not have to be put in a position to make those decisions on a ballot. It should be, what's your priority? This, and this. Put them in order over here.
Yeah. Why not?
And then you just go from there. Let's talk about another thing, City Hall related, because I was listening obviously to you filling in on the Jill Bennett show, and I thought that it was the perfect sort of dovetail of your former self as a city councillor and your current self as a opinion talk show host and independent business person at Curve Communications. You get crisis management, you understand, the messaging. So you were looking at what happened in front of the Vancouver Police Department headquarters on Wednesday with Councillor Jean Swanson. You set the table and bring us through.
It was funny because Jean Swanson, not funny, well, it's interesting. Jean Swanson, who's city councillor in Vancouver, was invited to hand out illicit drugs, hardcore drugs, cocaine, heroin, meth for free to anybody who wanted that on the downtown east side. Turns out that it was actually not to everybody. It was she gave it out to groups who then they would distribute it. Very complicated. Basically, she was giving out free drugs. God knows where they came from. She said they were safe and they were clean and they were not dangerous. It was a protest, right? It was to draw attention to the fact that people are dying every day, which we all agree. I was surprised, she agreed to come on NW and be interviewed by me, which was great. I appreciate that. I wasn't in attack mode with her. I wanted to hear why, and because I knew I'd have Melissa to jump on next, who was a city councillor as well and for MPA. Although I got to tell you, they both agreed safe supply is the priority. How you get there is where they differ.
Yeah.
In politics and in governance, and I believe in radicalism. Now, do I agree with Jean Swanson and giving away drugs on the streets? No. But I do believe that radicalism leads to centrism, leads to the center. You find a place in the middle if you have these extremes. Not everybody on this. We don't want everybody on the extremes, but if there are people who are in the extreme, it's easier to find a center. So in this case we had Jean Swanson giving out drugs. And
I liked your conversation with Jean Swanson. I actually played the clips of both Councillor Swanson and Councillor DiGenova on the afternoon show where I was filling in because I found it interesting, because your question was basically very pointed, like, should we be doing this? And her response was basically a political question back to you. Like, I think that's the wrong question to be asking, because we have to do something more when there are 5, maybe 6 people a day dying due to the tainted drug supply. And I think everybody needs to hear that, like we did back in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, when people started talking about needle exchange. And it was like, you're going to provide needles to addicts? It's like, yes, there's an AIDS crisis. And that's what's getting, spreading this virus. Like the needles, our dirty needles, are a problem. And that was like, bro clutching. And then all of a sudden that was normalized. And so it wasn't underground anymore. And then it was like, now there's a safe injection site that's underground. And now safe injection sites are normalized and saving lives in this tainted drug. So
a few problems in Milltown, but the new...
No doubt, George. I'm not saying that they are the be all end all and fixer, but man, fewer people are dying. Imagine how many people a day would die without a safe injection site with fentanyl and carfentanil.
Well, during AIDS, it would have been horrible. And,
it would have been.
And I agree. And this fentanyl thing is just brutal, and that's an issue also with our ports. Like, where is this stuff coming from, and how's it
It
getting
is.
here? Especially during the COVID crisis, like it's still flowing in here and killing as many people, if not more, than it was before. How is that
Yeah.
possible? How? And so,
How indeed.
it's a
But it's
why we can't get
drug cartel, drug trade, and
that was
money laundering, and all the things, right? Like those are all part of this problem, and they're exacerbated when the actual supply of drugs
yeah.
is limited because of COVID. So they can cut it with what you can legally mail here. You can legally mail it here. That's the crazy bit. Anyways, but there is Dr. Henry making news today.
I think it's interesting that they were agreeing, and they're on the same path. It's slightly different. So.
Right. So Dr. Bonnie Henry, our provincial health officer, not talking about COVID-19 today, was talking about safe supply. She has been an advocate for that. She has been trying to find a way to save as many lives every single day as Dr. Henry does. And it's been controversial every single time. Today was a day where they started to take steps towards that, an official capacity, talking about prescribing and dispensing certain equivalents, drug equivalents, like instead of getting morphine in the way that an addict would get it on the street, you get hydromorphone in a patch or a pill. Yeah. I'm no expert on this, but from what I gleaned today from the press briefing, that was sort of where it was going. And Eric Chapman and I were talking about it, who is a contributor and produced today on afternoons on CKNW, and he's very engaged with what is broken in this process. And he was all in. He's like, yes, safe supply, that's going to be it. And then they said, yeah, in 18 to 24 months. And he was like, oh my God.
We're dying today. Like, why?
Thousands.
To produce this stuff and get it distributed. For God's sake, we found a cure for COVID and distributed it to the whole world in 1 year. I mean, seriously? Come on, guys.
Seriously. Can we go seriously? Come on, guys, to the wildfire conversation. Why is there not a state of emergency in British Columbia?
It is a mystery to me. I talked to Lauren Dirksen, who's an MLA and BC Liberal MLA up in Williams Lake. So he's the Caribou, huge. He's got a huge riding.
Right. Chilcotin region, right? Caribou. Yeah.
Caribou, Chilcotin. He was like, and I think this is the basic mentality of the people in the interior. They're going, hello, it's an emergency up here. And I think NDP, the BC NDP, their perception is from the lower mainland of Vancouver Island, where there's not a problem. And so they really don't see the urgency that the mostly BC Liberal ridings across the interior are facing. Is this politics? I sure hope not, because it really, there are many, many things you get if you call a provincial state of emergency. You get all sorts of extra things from the federal government, from other provinces.
It removes red tape. It takes away the necessity of going through proper channels. If you see the house on fire, you're like, commandeer that, take it over there. That's going next.
Number of fires at this stage, a record by like a long shot.
Since last year, this is a stat for you. I got this from BC Wildfire Service when I interviewed Sarah Hall from there. This year, between April and now, 1,000 fires, 200+ thousand hectares burned. Last year, in the same window, 30.
Yeah. Last year was
and 650 hectares. But that's the difference that human caused, and perhaps the heat dome and the lightning storms or whatever. She said, but it was like,
yeah, we had summer last year. Yeah, but even compared to the bad years of 2017, 2019, we're so way ahead of those numbers, and that's scary because the worst that is to come is August. It's always the worst.
And there's just this need to really. They say that once it happens to you, you have a greater understanding of the urgency. And that's what last week when I talked to you from the cabin, we went on vacation, went up to the cabin there in the Kamloops area, and we were in the middle of it. We had a go bag. My son and I hopped in the car at one point and drove into town so we could check and see where the smoke was coming from. And it was like, it's all around you there. I mean, my friend Marianne McKenzie's in Clinton, and she just posted a picture of all of the alerts and the evacuations, and it's all around her. Yeah. And she's sitting there on her acreage with 2 horses and 2 dogs. And like, what do you do?
That's what Lawrence said. He said, they had to get a helicopter into a First Nations area, because they were trapped. They had to get them in and out of there by helicopter because they couldn't get the people up through roads. They said,
Terrifying.
if you go to Green Lake right now, you can't get out. There's only one way in, and they've got a fire in that area. 100 Mile House, Cache Creek, all these places have often one-way streets. So you have to plan for the worst, and I don't get the sense that there's an urgency on the province as part of this on this file.
And the unspun piece of that, and I really believe that Lauren brought this when he was talking to you, was that everybody in that community, it's not partisan there. It's not, are you NDP? Are you Liberal? Whose side are you on? It's a community team effort of holy crap. Like, we need to protect ourselves and our livelihoods. It is ripping through the interior right now.
Like the horses alone, the complexity of getting your horses. There are a lot of horses in the interior, and moving horses is no easy task.
No.
Or cows or whatever. I mean, this is not Vancouver City. You are.
This isn't putting water out for the crows.
Yeah, or feeding coyotes. It's like
feeding coyotes.
It's really, I don't get it, and I hope it's not politics. The NDP are saying, oh, it's because there's these different stages, blah blah blah. I'm like, really? So, anyways, whatever. We'll see, because it's getting bad, and there's some rain coming up north, which is good, but more lightning and there's no sign that this weather's stopping for the Okanagan and the Caribou. So,
be safe and be mindful, as we were saying, like with the human cause, like talking through the human cause. There's a fire ban that includes your hibachi. Like, how about not right now? How about just not right now? Because the opportunity, like, you're sitting there doing your barbecue with your charcoal and you're thinking you're all good. And then a gust of wind comes and all of a sudden there's a grass fire. Now the tree's on fire. Now it's a wildfire. And now what? Like, we don't need to barbecue that badly right now. We really don't. So just be mindful about that. If you're headed to the interior, if you're going to the backcountry, like, make sure you have a fire extinguisher. Make sure you have buckets of water if you're going to have anything aflame. Like, just, that's my rant. End scene on the mom rant. Let's talk about COVID-19. We did break our record of 6 straight days with no deaths. 1 person passed away, 54 new cases, 650 active cases in British Columbia. One more, I think it's up to 11 people in ICU and 61, I believe, in hospital, which is down a few from yesterday. But, these are numbers
going up.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is the reopening and where we're at with that, and I have I don't know if you heard about England. They lost a soccer game last weekend, and it's football, I should call it, I suppose. And Amanda was obviously sad. She's British, and English, and so she's very excited because they got to this final, first time since 1960.
And they scored first, and it looked like they were and then it went to kicks, and then Italy won, and it was
So we discussed after in the devastation that she was going through for that. I said, well, why don't you go to pop over? It looks like you should be able to fly to England soon. And then, like, you think, because we're opening up, right? She's English. She should be able to fly to England soon. Canada's doing well. They should be able to putting us into their green zone or their zoning by end of August, don't you think? Anyways, I talked to Claire Newell today on the show, and I've never heard Claire so candidly negative, I guess. Claire Newell, who owns Travel Best Bets, is well known.
Very positive, a very, very positive individual.
She was like frustrated because several things she brought up. One was like, basically, she didn't say this, but it's really risky because she doesn't think that England will be changing much. That going there and the whole, right now you have to have a British passport to go there. You can't go there, so. She said what was
pardon the garbage truck. I'm sorry, we're doing this in the evening. Pardon that.
That's
sorry.
Okay. I can't hear.
So okay, good.
The thing that she talked about was that the math, and this is where spin comes in. And we know that Trudeau's contemplating and is likely going to call an election. He announced yesterday that the border is going to stay closed at least for the next few weeks. Okay, so she did the math. Let's say it's a few weeks. Let's say it's 4 weeks. What if he calls an election, drops the writ in 4 weeks? That means you can't do anything once the writ dropped. You're dissolved. The parliament dissolves. No decisions really can be made in that election. Right. So now you're looking at, let's say it's 4 weeks from now, drop the writ. They still haven't opened up the borders, and then suddenly you got an 8-week election campaign, and then it takes about 4 weeks for the new government to get in and sworn in. She was saying at this stage, based on that math, we won't have the borders open, or in a way, until November, and it's just so she of course has a special interest in having borders open as a travel agent and having COVID go away. But the math totally makes sense. And is it this decision based on spin? Is it based on the math and polling that Trudeau's doing because he wants to win? And I think there is a sense, and I got some emails afterwards saying, no way, we absolutely, should not open this border. People are very passionate about not opening the border.
Yeah. 75% of Canadians think that it should be, the mass majority of Canadians think that there should be a 75% two-dose in both Canada, in the population of Canada, as well as in the United States before the border opens.
You're ever going to get to 75%.
I agree with you. I don't think so.
That's unrealistic. But yeah, so
that was a poll, though. That was a Today thing on our debrief with Chris Galis. I was like, whoa.
You don't think Trudeau's looking at that stuff going, well, yeah. I don't want to, I want to look like a rock star for this thing. I don't want to look like I'm making the wrong decision at this stage.
Right.
It's like in sports. You like sports a lot where they, instead of you're winning by 1 point or whatever, and you'll play defense all the whole time. You won't get aggressive. You won't take any risks because you want to keep that
defensive play. Yeah.
That's what England did. They're
playing defense. Yeah. You very rarely win when you protect a 1-goal lead. You very rarely win. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you get
it was just kind of sad because I have flights booked. Of course, flying the States, no problem. But I have a flight booked for England in December. But she said this one guy called and said, well, I want to go down to this event in August, and they can't. She said, well, I doubt it, but you could fly down there and then drive back. It's like, what's so stupid? I was like, okay,
it's so crazy.
Fly there. You can fly to Washington State, no problem.
I had a friend of mine went down. She's a U.S. citizen who lives here, married to a Canadian, with kids, and hasn't seen her family in 2 years, and had to get to the East Coast. And we're going to fly out of Seattle and fly there. They had, all the protocols. They're fine with it. They'll do the test. They were all vaccinated except for the youngest. They're fine to quarantine when she comes back, blah, 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 all of the things. They got in their car to drive down, got to the border, and they said, everybody, because the kids are U.S. citizens because their mother's U.S. citizen, but the husband is not. And the border guard said, everybody but him can go. And so they had to turn around, and they canceled everything, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then rebooked for the next day, drove down to the same border crossing in the same vehicle.
No,
not a question, waved right through.
I hate that. That's the kind of stories you hear about City Hall and getting permits. It's like one guy will tell you one thing, another guy tells you, like, why? It's crazy. We started this podcast about coyotes, but your column's about dogs this week.
It is. My column is about dogs because I am the crazy dog lady, as you know. You heard my dogs fighting in the background. I honestly have a little
cats right now. By the way, there's like 2 cats roaming. I feel like
You love your cats. You were like, I don't like cats, and then you got your cats, and there's just all these kitten photos of you that I get from Amanda, a COVID cat. But I have my rescue dogs, and I was reading about in the United States because one of my dogs is from a high kill shelter in California. He was on death row. Little scout, just the smartest little dude. He was so awesome. I got him through Thank Dog I'm Out. They come through the airport and they've got all the crates there and they set it all up. That's a great rescue organization. They also do local rescues too. So don't email me. I know local. But our little scouter came via that way. And he has just been a rock star of a dog. The only thing was that they thought he was probably 2, and then he doubled in size and had baby teeth, so he was a puppy, but was fine. It ended up being whatever. And then I was in love with him in the first 5 seconds. I just can't imagine taking a pandemic puppy, and dropping them off at a shelter when we start to reopen. That's the reality happening mostly across the United States. In my column, I talk about how the fact that here in BC, the BC SPCA does such a great job of vetting adopters that you really have to want to adopt a dog. It's not free, or a pet, period, through the BC SPCA. That's so low returns, which is excellent. But in the US, that's not the case. So I wanted to talk about my one rescue dog, Baxter, who I rescued off of breakfast television. The whole story's in my column you can read about, but let me just tell you this. Okay. Baxter was not a simple dog. He was not rainbows and unicorns. We called him Barbara because he was just a little bit of a bitch. Anyway, But I loved him and he loved me. And we found a way through the tough times. And Lori Chordick of the BCSBCA gave me a bunch of advice about making sure that you do everything you can to get through the tough times with your pandemic puppy before you give them up. Don't give up. And here's some advice on how you can, get to the point where you can get back to the office without there being separation anxiety and all that. So check it out, the orca.ca. The middle there, I can't remember. Whoa, man's best friend, I think is what McLean K put as the headline for the middle this week. Yeah. So, and make sure you sign up for the Fin there, because the information I get on the daily from the Fin is really quite valuable.
Time saves me time. And don't forget to follow us. Do I have to remind you? Follow
at George_Affleck. Woo! At Jody Vance, Jody with a Y Vance. And you've got your at CKNW email as well, right?
Yeah, George at CKNW.com.
Jody at CKNW.com.
I got George Garrett's email, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe you did. So, there's a cat. There's a cat. Yeah. And are you Jill Bennett show tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah. And then I'm off that for a week, and then Mike Smith for 2 weeks.
Nice. So. I enjoy the UnSpun live crossovers that we've been doing. I'm going to miss that. That was a really good idea you had. Anyway, that's a little inside baseball. See you later, people.
Bye.